Welcome to Racing Insights. My name is Aryan, and today we are going to be taking a look at and previewing the 2026 Austrian Grand Prix. If it's your first time watching this channel, and it will probably be that as it is the first video on this channel, welcome first and foremost, and I hope you guys go on to enjoy the content that will be shown on this channel. I made this channel to talk about racing and cars, so if you're interested in any of that, I would greatly appreciate a subscribe and a like, as it'll get the channel out there more and it'll hit the algorithm. So I would greatly appreciate it. I love talking about racing, so having some more discussions in the comments as well would be amazing. I would love to talk to you guys and discuss what's going to be happening in the world of racing. Of course, today it's all about F1. Maybe tomorrow I might do something with IndyCar. Maybe the day after might be something to do with World Endurance or IMSA, potentially. Endurance racing, sports car racing, potentially. So let me know what you guys want to talk about in the comment section down below, and maybe we might do a video about that. Now, to start off this video, before we get to the teams and drivers, I actually want to talk a little bit about the track characteristics and what we can expect to see from the Red Bull Ring this weekend. Now, let's pull up the track map. As you can see right here, we have the track map up and running. So quickly, before we get into the in-detailed characteristics of the circuit and some key points I want to point out regarding this circuit and what we can expect to be a massive factor affecting the teams and drivers. First and foremost, we have 4 straight line modes. As you can see, there's one here, one here, one here, and one here. Basically, turns 10 to turn 1, turn 1 into turn 3, turn 3 into turn 4, and then turn 8 into turn 9. 4 straight line modes, and I do expect that this time around, to be quite honest, actually, I think we're going to see a lot more back and forth. It might not be as much as, of course, we saw at the early parts of the season in Australia and stuff like that, because of how they've rejigged the power split, of course, and reducing the megajoules and everything. I think we're not going to see as many back and forths, but definitely I think we'll see more than what we saw in Barcelona and Monaco, because of course in Monaco there was no overtake mode or anything of that sort, purely because of how the nature of the circuit is. And in Barcelona, the straights where, predominantly you'd see the overtakes, of course, turn into turn 9, from out of turn 9 into turn 10, and then, of course, into turn 1. It's on opposite sides of the circuit, right? Whereas here, you have one long straight, and one long straight back to back to back. And that, I think, will play a big factor, because you've got basically 3 key overtaking zones, right? Turn 1, turn 3, and turn 4. I'm a bit surprised they put a straight line mode and into turn 9, purely because, of course, with turn 9 it's a bit tricky, and I'm surprised that they've chanced that. I mean, they might remove it tomorrow potentially, or day after tomorrow. Sorry. At the time of recording, it's Wednesday. You might see it tomorrow, so it'll be Friday basically. They might remove it after Friday's running, purely because of the pit in being there, right? The cars that want to pit in usually go into towards the right before turn 9 happens. They slow down, so that speed differential is going to be quite interesting, of course, right? I mean, again, they've had it happen for years now, so I wouldn't be surprised if they are okay with it, but we're gonna just have to wait and see and how it plays out when the teams themselves try it out and see how it pans out, with traffic and impeding and all of that jazz. We're gonna have to just wait and see on that front. Now, when it comes to, obviously, the Austrian Grand Prix, like I said, Sector 1 and 2 are the overtaking opportunities, right? Power dependent circuit, excellent overtaking opportunities, in those sectors as well. But in Sector 2 itself, at the end of Sector 2 and all of Sector 3, it's all technical. So it relies on the car's aerodynamics, and, with the high-speed sections as well, it's going to be extremely technical for some of these drivers. So it's going to be an interesting approach from the teams on how they set up these cars to balance the two together, right? Because one half of the circuit is completely just be drag efficient, straight line. You have to be slick down the straight. Whereas into sector 3, basically coming out of Sector 2 into Sector 3, you're going to be wanting that power from the aerodynamic side of things. You're not wanting the straight line performance, you want the cornering performance, you want the tires to hold up as well. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how these teams are able to set up these cars to manage both, and which teams are super drag efficient to be able to maybe put a little bit more focus on aerodynamics while still having that straight line performance. I mean, based on, of course, the likes of Barcelona, I think there's a good chance Ferrari might be able to actually do really well here with their upgrades. I think their upgrades will allow them to be a little bit more efficient with how they set up their car. But again, we're gonna have to just wait and see when it comes to Friday, because we still have to see also which teams are bringing upgrades and how their upgrades are going to actually affect the ley line and of course the ranking of these cars going into the Grand Prix, of course, right? And we'll talk about those upgrades in just a moment. But before we get into the teams, again, I still have to talk about the factors that'll be affecting these teams. And there are three key factors, in my personal opinion, when it comes to the Red Bull Ring. First is the temperatures. The temperatures going into Austria initially was 30 degrees. We were looking to hit 30 degrees, which is not extremely hot, but it is still really warm conditions. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, just before I started recording this video, or actually while I was preparing the video and the script in the morning, there was yellow warnings for this weekend, yellow temperature warnings. That has actually gone up to orange temperature warnings and potentially temps going up to about 34, 35 degrees Celsius, which is quite high. And to be honest, it's not only going to be just the tires that these teams will need to look out for when it comes to Sector 2 and 3, but the components that they're going to be running, the engine, the brakes, the battery, all of these are going to be key components that will be affected by these high temperatures. And teams that are now currently being speculated to be influenced by these temperatures and their reliability being hurt, they might have to detune their cars to be able to actually run in these temperatures, and maybe they won't be able to race in close quarters. So if they're behind another car in the dirty air, they could struggle big time. So we're gonna have to just hold out and see how these high temperatures are going to influence these cars. I think Friday's running is going to give us a lot of information in terms of how the teams are going to manage these cars. Maybe they might open up the air vents a little bit more. That's something I think that we could see some of these cars, teams and drivers doing, is they'll open up the vents in their side pods to allow more air to flow in. But again, that leads to point number two, the altitude. With the mountainous climate and, the high altitude, the air is going to be thin. So the teams won't have that much air to actually channel in to the cars. Again, that leads to also furthermore the point being that these high temperatures will not really mesh well with some teams. And that's going to be interesting. Furthermore, because of the high altitude as well and the air being thin, the turbos are going to play a factor, because for bigger turbos, you need more air to spool them, right? And so, of course, we know that all the teams have varying sizes of turbos, with Ferrari having the smallest and Audi having the biggest. So Audi having the biggest will probably suffer the most, while Ferrari having the smallest will actually suffer the least. This is going to be critical, I don't think, not only at the start. I think the start actually might not be affected the most, even, to be honest. I think the most is going to be coming out of corners and, slow speed corners, especially those that turn 3 corner right here. I mean, this is a very slow speed corner. I mean, you come down to about 40, 50 miles an hour, if I'm not mistaken. If my memory serves me correct, I could be wrong and it's a little bit higher, but it is a slow speed corner. So in that sort of a corner, coming out into turn 4, some teams might struggle quite a lot, especially if they have large turbos. So it's going to have to be it's going to be an interesting one with the altitude, how it's going to play into certain teams' engines and stuff like that. Again, you might want to open up the vents even more and the intakes to be able to allow more air to flow in, as much air to flow in as possible. But that means you're going to be more draggy as well. It's a lose-lose situation in that scenario. So it's going to be difficult. It's going to be quite difficult for the teams. Now, number 3 is the curbs. Of course, Austria has a lot of serrated curbs, for lack of a better way of putting it. I feel like I'm getting Vietnam flashbacks from what I remember seeing, with some cars just absolutely demolishing themselves going over, like, especially this specific section, turns 9 into turn 10. I mean, it is crazy. That whole serrated curbs at the end. Oof. it is quite deadly. Even at the exit of turn 10, I remember there being an incident where a car literally lost a little bit of its front wing, or all of its front wing even, I think it was. I can't remember who it was. Let me know in the comments if you guys remember who it was. I remember somebody losing a lot of their wing here, to be honest. So it is going to be very tricky for these teams, especially those teams that struggle with vibrations, to successfully navigate 71 laps of this track. It's going to be very tricky. So I'm curious to see how these teams are going to manage these three factors. I think it's going to be fascinating. I think it'll be it might be a surprise in some ways to see certain teams above some other teams as well this weekend. And I mean, we're going to be seeing some updates as well from the teams. That is going to play a factor as well. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think this Austrian Grand Prix is going to be a classic. I really do believe that to be the case. Now that we have spoken about the track, let's go team by team and talk about what we can expect from them. Mercedes will be wanting to fight back, and with their win streak coming to an end with Hamilton and Ferrari's win at Barcelona, they'll be trying to come at Austria full guns blazing. And while I still do believe that they have the overall fastest package, Antonelli's retirement at Barcelona and Russell's own issues in Canada and hiccups at China, along with their own customers' problems, indicate that the Mercedes PU isn't as bulletproof in the slightest, and sources such as Motorsport Italia suggest that this is due to temperature-related problems with the battery. They seem to suffer from high temps, which makes close racing difficult, and as we have seen in Barcelona, Antonelli was actually stuck behind Russell's car for the majority of the race in hot air. And this could be problematic for them in Austria because, like I said, the temperatures set to be sky high, and this might lead them to having to detune the engine to prevent any potential loss in their PU allotment, because I'm pretty sure at this point, Russell actually, I think, the closest out of all the Mercedes customers, I think, is Norris actually. But I think Russell's also getting really close to losing an engine and potentially incurring penalties as well. Just as I was preparing this video actually as well, furthermore, news has come out that Mercedes may have to remove the serrated diffuser section at their rear with immediate effect. Even though they are trying to propose delaying it to next week at Silverstone, this might not be as easy for them to just try and postpone, because Ferrari actually had inquired about this diffuser and they wanted to introduce something like this ages back. They actually wanted to introduce it before the season began, and the FIA told them no. But then the FIA said that they're fine with this, so Ferrari are now like, well, then we can introduce a more extreme version of this. And obviously now the FIA is like, whoa, hold on a second. We don't want this to be a war, arms race for the diffuser section, because especially with the diffuser section, it could lead to more dirty air problems and all that sort of stuff. Again, it'll be the same thing as the ground effect with the floor and everything. It becomes an arms race and it will become difficult. So I think they might let the ban go through from this race onwards, which will lead to Mercedes struggling a bit potentially when it comes to that side of the car basically. However, on the other hand, Toto Wolff has confirmed that there will be some new updates coming to the car with a focus on reliability and performance. So it's going to be an interesting weekend for the Silver Arrows, because we don't know where they're going to lie. Will the updates actually do something, or will they have to lose out on potentially performance from the engine and, of course, this potential ban on the diffuser side? It's going to be interesting to see what comes out of this weekend for the Silver Arrows. When it comes to the drivers, though, Antonelli still leading the championship. He's not going to take it lightly, of course. He's not going to risk losing more points to Hamilton and Russell after what happened in Barcelona. And I'd imagine neither will the Mercedes bosses. In fact, actually, Toto Wolff at the end of Barcelona alluded to the fact that they may employ team orders, as he said, and I quote, "It's something that we need to discuss with them for the future, because the championship fight is so tight, and that they might have cost themselves victory by allowing them to race each other in the manner they did." While Russell is only 48 points behind Antonelli, and we are only on round 8 of the championship, there is a good chance that because of Hamilton and Ferrari's threat, they could start employing team orders, which will not be good for George Russell. And in my personal opinion, I I can see it happening, to be quite honest. As much as I'd like for them to, fight it out, and it's like I just said, it's only round 8. We have 16 more rounds to go, assuming Bahrain and Saudi come back, which 50-50 on that. I think one of them will come back, so let's say 13 more rounds. We have 15 more rounds. We have 15 more rounds. It's a 23-round season potentially. I think it's too soon, but at the same time, with Ferrari coming back and in such force, potentially with the engine upgrades they might be having, which we'll come on to in just a moment, and everything going on, I think it's a bit tricky to say no to the idea of potential team orders, to be honest. I do think it's I do think it makes sense from the Mercedes perspective, but as a fan, it sucks. It sucks big time. And I do feel for the George Russell fans, especially because he doesn't deserve such a immediate, okay, accept defeat kind of thing. He doesn't deserve it. I mean, like I said, he's only 48 points behind. That's 2 race wins potentially. If Antonelli has 2 DNFs, he's right back in it, assuming he wins the 2 races, right? It's tricky. It's a tricky one. Let me know what you guys would do in Toto Wolff's position. Would you employ team orders already, or would you just let them race from here on out? Let me know. Ferrari are coming in from a major high, and they seem to not be stopping, having qualified for 80 euro additional development or upgrade opportunities. Glad I got that right in one go. I was a bit worried that I was going to get that wrong. They seem to be set to be one of the first teams to bring an engine upgrade, with sources suggesting a boost of about 7 to 8 horsepower in total, which may not seem like a lot. In fact, I think it's about a tenth around a short circuit like Austria, but it's more about what they do with it in terms of energy recovery and general performance that matters the most, to be honest. Of course, it's not just an engine upgrade, it's also fuel as well. Shell's bringing a new fuel for them, so it's going to be interesting to see how they play with the energy recovery, general performance, and all that sort of jazz. Will they be able to run maybe less fuel, make the car run lighter at the start of races? We'll have to just wait and see on that front. We will have to wait, actually, to be honest, to see that, because I think they're not going to run the new engine until free practice 3, because of course they'll probably want to use a new or older spec engine, I should say, for free practice 1 and free practice 2 to reduce the chances of taking a lot of life from the new engine. They'll probably want to try and just maximize as much running as possible in free practice 1 and free practice 2 to, just get setups ready and everything of that sort. And while, yes, they might prefer using the new engine to test out reliability, see how the car performs with the setup with the new engine in FP1 and FP2, it's just risky, to be quite honest. Obviously, in terms of, just taking life, you're taking away potential performance that you could be running in, completely with a completely fresh engine in free practice 3, qualifying and the race, right? So I think it makes a little bit of more sense running the new engine in those sessions, the critical sessions, of course, right? But I can see also the point people make in terms of, well, it gives them a potential risk of setups being not cohesively working with the new engine and stuff like that. However, there is positives to look at as well when it comes to the other upgrades the team has done. Of course, they're extremely positive about what they've done in Barcelona, improving the rear end stability. The tire degradation is much better on the car, as well as the car is slipping a lot less. It's a major step forward that they've taken from when the car first initially appeared on track for its full debut at Australia, of course, right? In fact, I think analysts have said that it's about an 0.8 improvement from its initial appearance. So with the new engine, the upgrades working well, the track characteristics potentially working for the Scuderia, could they be the favorites for this weekend? Only time will tell. On the driver's front, it's actually 2 very opposite runs happening when it comes to both garages. Of course, with Hamilton, He's coming off his first win with the Scuderia, and he'll be hoping to continue that performance, especially now that he is the leading contender to Antonelli's championship chances, having taken second place in the championship at Monaco. On the other hand, Charles is going to have to look to bounce back from probably his worst career run. I think generally, not even just F1, I think just generally he's on his worst run. A mistake in Miami, off the pace in Canada, still managed a respectable fourth, but off the pace completely to his teammate, in the wall due to the brake issues at Monaco, and retired from a mechanical failure at Barcelona, the hydraulics issue, and also crashing in qualifying. It's been a nightmare month for Charles, but Austria is known to be a good track for him. So as long as he keeps the nose of the car clean and Hamilton continues with his upwards trajectory and his consistently good performances that he's had over the last few weeks in Ferrari, we could see both Ferraris doing extremely well. Fingers crossed, at least for the Scuderia. McLaren are nearly there. Based on the performances at Catalonia along with Miami and Japan, they are competing with Mercedes from track to track, but they seem to still be struggling to get on top of their PU woes. We've seen them retire in Monaco. We've seen them have issues still here and there in practice sessions and stuff like that. There's some issue or another plaguing the driver, and it's sometimes minor, like I said, sometimes race ending, and the team needs to figure something out with Mercedes and their powertrains division, because they cannot afford to lose points to retirement. On their chassis front, we still don't know the full extent of what upgrades are coming to Austria just yet. However, sources are suggesting that we could be seeing a potential Macarena rear wing, the likes we see on the Ferrari and Red Bull this weekend, and they're testing it potentially. Now, what they mean by testing it, I don't know if they're going to run it throughout the entire weekend, or they're going to just use it for pre-practice one and figure out whether or not it actually is working or not. We've seen Ferrari do that, where they tested it first in practice, didn't work. Okay, we're going to go back and just use the regular rear wing. Red Bull brought it and then just stuck with it. They've tested it extensively at their factory, right? So we're going to see if McLaren have done the former or the latter, and whether they'll run it the entire weekend or not. We're going to have to just wait and see on that front. When it comes to the drivers, Lando has been doing a far better job than Oscar has. It's plain and simple. Lando, I don't even think over the last few weeks, outside of Japan, Lando has been the better driver. I genuinely believe that, to be honest. And it's going to be the same, I feel, going into the next couple of weeks, right? Austria, really good track for Lando. Silverstone, really good track for Lando. Hungaroring, really good track for Lando. Belgium, really good track for Lando. Oscar is good at those tracks as well, for sure, no doubt about it. But with his recent performances, I am a little bit concerned. I don't think we've seen him at his best since Japan, to be quite honest. And we're going to need another good performance from him soon. Otherwise, this is also going to be a very disappointing year for the Aussie. I am quite concerned about his performances, really am. I think it's quite concerning. I don't know if it's because of what happened last year and that just complete bottle he had that he's lost confidence, but I think he just needs to forget about it and get on with it. I mean, Lando seems to be driving a much smoother season comparatively. I think now that he's won that world championship last year, I think Lando is probably driving the best he has, because that pressure has completely come off him. He's driving like how he used to back in those early days of 2019, 2020. I feel like that way, at least, because now that pressure of I need to win is completely gone. On the other hand, I feel like Oscar's building up that pressure, like I need to take, some sort of revenge, or I need to make up for what happened in that second half of last season. It's a very tricky one. Psychology can play a major factor with these drivers. So I do feel for Oscar a little bit in that sense, but we're going to need to see good performances stat from him again. Now we move on to Red Bull. Red Bull have not had much to celebrate this year outside of Verstappen's podium in Canada. However, they do have something to celebrate this weekend. One, they can take home the honors of having the best ICE, internal combustion engine, which is seriously impressive for a team that is building their engines in-house for the very first time. That being said, they probably won't feel like celebrating because that means every other engine supplier is able to upgrade their engine and they can't. Well, if they can't celebrate that, well, at least they can they have the honor of celebrating some new upgrades coming this weekend, which will potentially finally bring them to minimum weight. This is going to net them at least another 2/10, give or take, based on the fact that after the Miami updates, they were only 6 kilograms overweight. This should at the very least get them closer to the top 3 teams rather than being in no man's land. Max Verstappen will continue to perform, that is to be expected, but more importantly for Red Bull, it is how he feels and what he expects from the upcoming update. If Red Bull fail to deliver the update and it does not improve performance significantly enough to challenge the top runners, there could be serious consideration from the Dutchman to leave the team. And maybe F1 as a whole, depending on other teams' contracts towards him potentially, and that could set back the team significantly next year. Hajar, on the other hand, simply needs to have a clean race this weekend. Both Monaco and Catalonia were a little bit messy, and maybe not by his own faults, of course, right? With obviously Monaco having engine-related problems, and then in Catalonia, he had that whole start issue, and then getting back up was a little bit of a hassle. It was a little bit of a hassle, let's be real. Alpine have been having a quiet 2026, but a strong one nonetheless, running 5th in the constructors and proving that the decision to swap to the Merc engines was the right idea. Now, what they need to ideally do is to continue to upgrade the car and stay ahead of the rest of the field while closing the gap to the top runners. And that is exactly what seems to not be happening. While some brought upgrades in Catalonia and some bring them in Austria, it is surprising that Alpine seems to not be bringing anything significant in nature to continue maintaining their position in the rankings. They have brought some parts, but it's nothing groundbreaking, like how Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, McLaren, even potentially the likes of Cadillac are bringing some major upgrades this weekend. It's surprising Alpine isn't, on the other hand, especially if they want to keep their 5th place ranking, because they're getting caught by Racing Bulls quite quickly even. Gasly has been bringing in the majority of points for the team, and while there are rumors swirling regarding Colapinto's seat and the fact that potentially Alonso may be doing a one last dance with Alpine, I probably wouldn't take too much stock in that fact. Even though I know we have Briatore at the helm of Alpine, I think that whole Alonso thing is a little bit far-fetched. However, I do think that there is going to be pressure on Colapinto, and Briatore will be looking at his performances because we know that he has drivers in the wing, right? We've seen that in F2, there's Alexander Dunn, there's Kushmaini, and of course, in the reserves, he's got Paul Aron. And I think Briatore will not be regretting any ideas of potentially, or letting go of any ideas of potentially swapping that second seat if he needs to, of course, until someone finally sticks in that second Alpine seat. I think still though, I do believe it's like a 60% chance Colapinto loses, or retains a seat, I should say. 40% chance he loses his seat. You never know with Briatore. You never know with Flavio. I think it's better to just wait and watch when it comes to that seat, because Colapinto is, I think if I'm not mistaken, he's like 30 points behind Gasly. And with the Racing Bulls catching slowly, and potentially other teams as well, bringing new upgrades, it's not something, he's going to take lightly if Colapinto doesn't back himself a little bit more and get some more points, of course, for the team. Racing Bulls is probably the only other team that is a bit more shafted than Red Bull with the recent ADUO announcement, because of course, while Red Bull has the funds and everything, the people, the manpower to continuously at least bring updates from the chassis side of things and everything, Racing Bulls was going to have to do the same, but with a much lesser budget and also lesser manpower, of course, right? So they're going to have to just keep working and developing and upgrading the car for the upcoming races and the next season as well, while obviously relying on the same power unit that Red Bull has. But on the other hand, I will say this. Both cars have been finishing in the points in the recent 2 races, which means that at least their upgrades that they're doing are strong, right? They've got good performance from the cars. The drivers are performing well. So as long as they string the strategy and pace together, I think Austria is going to still be a really good track for them as well. But it all comes down to what other teams bring on in terms of upgrades, right? It's gonna have to be something we keep an eye out for, purely because I do think Racing Bulls is probably gonna struggle more than Red Bull over the course of the season, keeping the other teams away from them, purely because, again, you're gonna see big engine upgrades from everybody else, right? Ferrari is gonna supply to Haas and, of course, Cadillac, Mercedes to Williams and Alpine. They'll stay ahead. Aston Martin, well, I don't know about Aston Martin necessarily, but Aston Martin, Audi will bring upgrades as well. And that can be quite critical, especially when you look at, when races go bonkers, go crazy. And, if this team is not there and other teams are, could be a big swing towards those teams in terms of points, right? So they're going to have to keep up in some way, shape, or form. And their best option is to do it via the chassis and aerodynamic side. What helps the team, however, is having 2 pretty on-form drivers, with both Lindblad and Lawson doing good, consistent jobs with the car. Lindblad has had his hiccups, and I do feel qualifying can be a little bit hit or miss for either drivers, depending on the weekend, right? It's 50-50. Sometimes one has a good weekend, sometimes the other has a bad weekend, and vice versa when it comes to qualifying. Both drivers have actually been solid in race pace, and I do expect them, if everything stays the same, which it never does in Formula One, they could possibly overtake Alpine in a few races' time, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do. But we're going to have to wait and see if Alpine, for example, brings something to Silverstone, for example, or if Williams brings something to Silverstone as well, potentially, right? Something could happen, right? We're going to have to wait and see on if Racing Bulls can keep up with the rest of the teams with the lack of engine upgrades. Haas. I don't know what's happening at Haas. For a team that did so well last year with their upgrades, this year it feels like it's just been the complete opposite. Their upgrades haven't really worked, and they've gone from showing some good performances to struggling in the bottom lower pack and in and around Williams. Ayu Komatsu needs to rejig the team back into the right gear and get the engineers on top of it, because they cannot afford to lose precious budget and time making upgrades more like downgrades. They started the season really well, and I am a little bit disappointed to see how things have ended up for the team. Ocon finished 13th last race, and then obviously Behrman had a retirement. Monaco was shocking, to be honest, if I recall correctly. I don't think they finished quite high. I mean, Ocon finished in the points, finished 9th, but I mean, there were so many retirements that I don't think it's right to even judge that necessarily. It's difficult for Haas, and I hope that they do bring upgrades either this weekend or maybe next weekend at Silverstone. Either races, I think it's a good opportunity. I mean, Silverstone, I'd arguably say is better because it's close by to the factory, right? So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do on that front. When it comes to the drivers, as I was just talking about Ocon, I believe they're doing the best with what the team is providing them, even on a strategy front, because I feel like it's every other week I see Ocon doing like 50 laps on the set of hards for no reason whatsoever. And speaking of Ocon, there are murmurs that Ocon might be getting replaced come next year by either Tsunoda, with Toyota looking to get some form of Japanese link in, or Rafael Camara, currently in F2 and a Ferrari Driver Academy member. A good talent, but a rookie, which I don't think is what Haas needs currently. Behrman is going to be in his third year, of course, next year, right? Technically pseudo fourth year, because of course in his first year, where he subbed in for Ferrari, he subbed in for Haas like 2 or 3 times. I do think having the experience of an Ocon or Tsunoda is a better choice. And I generally still believe, I think Ocon is a good choice. I feel like Ocon just has these bouts of inconsistency, which definitely can be a bit harmful, but I don't know if Tsunoda is necessarily a better option than Ocon, to be quite honest. I think for this weekend, Ocon just needs to keep his head down, and I do believe he'll be trying to prove something to the team to show why he deserves to still be in the sport. And on the other hand, I think Behrman, I mean, Behrman's actually not had some great couple of races. Yes, he's mainly had DNFs. I think he's DNF'd at both Monaco and Barcelona. So I think Behrman just needs to finish the race more than anything else. But on Ocon's side, I do think him getting some more points, or at least trying to perform better compared to Behrman especially, I think is going to be his target for sure. So definitely I'm curious to see how he drives this weekend. Williams are currently 8th in the constructors, and most certainly not where they want to be following last year's decision to completely focus on the new regulations. What hasn't helped them at all is the sheer bad luck they've had in the last few races, with Sainz getting bowled into by Hülkenberg and Monaco, and then Albon going 8 laps down because his T-cam was broken in Catalonia. It's just been a bizarre set of races for the team, and what they need most at Austria is a bit of good luck and reliability, which might be difficult with the Mercedes engine in the back, and we know what's happening this weekend. I've mentioned it a couple of times already with the temperatures. The Mercedes constructor teams, I should say, or the Mercedes customer teams and Mercedes themselves will probably struggle a little bit, I think, with the temperatures. But I do believe, just having a clean race, I think, is most important for this team. And I'm going to come on to it generally as well. But I do think that all these backmarker teams just need to have a clean race, because as we've seen with 2024, 2019, 2020, 2016, of course, right? And a couple of other races. I could be forgetting 1 or 2 other races, but we've seen Austria having some bizarre moments up front, cars being punted off or getting damaged or, colliding into each other. It's happened. Austria is chaotic a little bit in that sense. So as long as some of these teams can just make up some luck from, potential VSC or safety car, I think they've got to take advantage of that. The drivers also need that good luck and reliability, to be honest, because I do think one of them or both of them will probably get high blood pressure from the sheer frustration or anger they have towards the team. Because I think I'm genuinely... I wish I kept a track, or I had a shot for every time I've heard one or the other just tell the team that they should have listened to the drivers, or that they make the same mistake every single time. It's honestly, I think somebody needs to go back and check for me. If anybody can go back and check the radios from all the previous races, I feel like it's been every race that I've heard one of them just say, you didn't listen to me. You didn't listen to what we have to say. Why are we still making the same mistake? You know how these engines work. It's regular. I feel like it's just on repeat every single weekend. So yeah, at this point, for the drivers to have a clean weekend, I think Williams themselves need to make sure that they execute a clean weekend, to be quite honest. When making this video, I was actually pretty surprised to see Audi in 9th in the constructors, as I thought they'd been scoring regular points, but or at least they were close to the top 10 often enough. Well, it turns out actually the latter was more often the case than them scoring points, sadly. And I don't think they're going to do extremely well at Austria either, because again, with the turbo and with the high altitude and everything, it might be a difficult weekend for the German manufacturer, unless, of course, again, like I said, we've not heard anything from Audi. They might be bringing some upgrades for this race, which would be obviously something to their benefit, of course, right? Hulk is obviously going to be looking to score his first points as well, as we are now approaching the European leg of the season and he's not scored a single point. He is getting closer and closer, and of course we saw him really close in Catalonia, but then due to unfortunate circumstances like that whole kill switch situation in Catalonia, which still can't believe it happened, it's been difficult. It's been a difficult season, but I think it will happen soon. I'm not sure about it happening at Austria, but I do think it'll happen soon. Bortoleto, on the other hand, I think he seems to have just lost pace. Very Piastri-like in this case, to be honest, especially in recent races. Gabby is a great talent, and I do think he'll come back, but I'm just confused as to seeing where the performance has disappeared, and I don't think that's going to benefit him at all going into this weekend. I think he just needs a reset a little bit. Maybe the summer break post-Hungary might help him, or post-Belgium might help him, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there, to be quite honest. Well, Aston Martin won't be expecting much generally from Austria based on the rest of the season, with the high temperatures, rough curbing, the power-demanding circuit that Austria is. It's going to be a trial by fire for the team, and one I hope that they can get through. Rumors suggest that they should be getting their new engine in time for Belgium at the latest, with the possibility being Hungary, but that's too far away to say anything about right now. They have a point on the board, which congratulations to them. That's something I don't think anybody was expecting. But the question is, will their closest competitor in Cadillac jump them at some point? For Alonso and Stroll, this race, it's just a simple case of get the car to the end. I think that's going to be something I say in every preview. Get the car to the end. Because a circuit like Austria, Silverstone, Hungary, Belgium, all four of these races, I feel like these races can throw some curveballs and some scenarios where the front runners could cause their own downfall. And so, in my opinion, their job is it's the same as the rest of the season. Get the car to the end and in one piece. Speaking of Cadillac, they look to be bringing a brand new set of updates, one that is said to be massively different in terms of looks, and an updated livery to signify the growth and change. Well, that's a lot of word and talk, but what matters most is to see these changes be positive on the track. Both Cadillac and Haas are said to possibly not be running Ferrari's upgrades, which is not out of force, by the way. Ferrari have to offer them. That's part of the regulations. Ferrari's new updates have to be offered to the customers. It goes the same for all the other suppliers as well. If Mercedes brings an engine upgrade, has to be offered to all the customers. Same thing with Red Bull, has to be offered to Racing Bulls. And if Audi or Aston Honda had more customers, it would be the same for them. But it's not out of force. It's actually out of choice. And it does make some sense, especially depending on how the engine packaging changes and if they would need to change anything in terms of geometry, chassis side of things or whatever. It could cause a little bit more problem than actually being a benefit. So that being said, if they can at least show some good improvement on the aero front, if they could at least overtake the Astons and get close to the back of the field, I think it's going to be a fantastic set of updates for the team. Bottas and Perez have both done relatively well so far this season, and while I could dog Perez for messing up the start twice in Monaco, which lost Cadillac a precious first point, they've still got years of experience, and both drivers with their input hopefully will help the upgrades that Cadillac have brought to be maximized and, give positive feedback when it comes to, if there needs to be any changes to the setup side of things or upgrades can be tweaked a little bit here and there in terms of how it adjusts the rest of the car and stuff like that. That's going to be the most important to see. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, I have a small soft spot for Cadillac. I think because it's the 11th team, completely brand new, I have a small soft spot for them in that I hope they do well. I really do hope that these upgrades do well. Now, we'll move on to some predictions. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to have to do these predictions in a very old-fashioned way. White background, because I don't have anything ready, to be honest. As I said, this is a very last minute, to be honest. I wasn't ready necessarily. I was busy with some other stuff. I've had a leg injury. So what I was hoping to do at the start of this week in terms of preparing the graphics and everything, very last minute now. It's all very last minute. Hopefully for the next race in terms of this, I'm a bit better off. So let's start off with pole position. I'll start off with pole position. So pole position, I think PP. I mean, sure, for whatever. We'll run with it. Pole position. I think it's gonna be Antonelli. I think Antonelli will be wanting to come back and perform better this weekend. This is so scuffed, but that's what we love around these ends. I think pole position is going to go to Antonelli. I think he is going to be wanting to come back with a bit of a vengeance. Barcelona wasn't necessarily great for him at the start. Obviously, he got into it, was faster than Russell in the second stint. Retired, unfortunately. He's gonna want to come back, and I think if there's any place they don't detune the engines, it's gonna be qualifying, because it's a couple of laps. They're probably not gonna be running behind other cars. Is the best opportunity for them to just get that track position at the start of the race, right? However, for the race, I don't see that happening. So let me just bring up this. I think, oops, why is it so weird? 1 second. Let me just do this. There we go. So there we go. Whoop-de-doo. So first, let's see. First, second, and third. There we go. Lovely stuff. First, I think it's going to be Hamilton. I think Hamilton's going to be first. I think I know it's not Hamilton's favorite track. Actually, I changed my mind. We're going to go for Ferrari. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. We're going to go for Ferrari's Golden Boy. Ferrari's Golden Boy is going to come first, I think. I think it's going to be Charles first, Hamilton second, and I think these upgrades are going to work. I have a feeling these upgrades are going to work. I think Red Bull are going to show that their upgrades are going to work, but I don't think they're going to be faster than Ferrari. I think Red Bull are coming third. I do think that the Mercedes are going to get impacted by these. I do think they're going to get impacted by the whole temperatures, curbing, reliability, the diffuser being removed. I'm assuming the diffuser is going to be removed. We're going to have to wait and see if that actually happens. But I do think the diffuser is going to be removed. And so I think we're going to see a Ferrari 1-2 and Max third. Am I regretting it a little bit? Yes, I am regretting my decisions a little bit. I am putting a lot of faith in Red Bull actually bringing good upgrades as well. I don't think even Red Bull fans themselves are, from what I've seen on Twitter and everything, I don't think Red Bull fans themselves are hyped up about what upgrades are coming this week, and I think they have zero faith. But I have faith, okay? I have faith in Red Bull, all right? I've seen way too many remontadas from them, man. Too many to count in my lifetime of watching Formula 1. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below of the Austrian Grand Prix. What do you guys expect to see when it comes to the performances of these teams? Who do you think will come first, second, third, pole position? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Until then, take it easy, everybody. Ciao. Bye-bye.